Hey everyone, welcome back to yet another episode of No Woman Left Behind. I'm Rosie, and today I'm thrilled to be joined by Roberta Fernandez. Roberta is an experienced corporate trainer, an engaged public speaker, and an integrative emotional intelligence specialist. She holds a master practitioner certification in NLP, which is neuro linguistics programming, and is a board certified hypnotist. Roberta has an incredible depth of experience in helping women unlock their potential. And today we're diving deep into some transformative topics that I'm sure will resonate with you. In this episode, Roberta and I were discussing two powerful ideas. First, the challenge she poses to women to really understand what they want, a question that is surprisingly difficult and many women struggle to answer. And we're also going to explore her unique AHARA program. This is a year-long journey designed to elevate your self-awareness and realization of your true abilities. And trust me, you don't want to miss this conversation because Roberta is that good. If you are feeling stuck in your career or just want to gain some new insights into personal growth, this is definitely the episode for you. So grab your favorite drink, your coffee, Dunkin' Donuts, Starbucks, whatever it is, get comfortable, and let's dive right in. Are you ready to accelerate your career? Whether you're just starting out, making your move up the ladder, or ready to take the fast lane, there's one question you need to ask yourself. Where do I stand? Introducing the Promotion Readiness Quiz. In just a few minutes, discover if you're an emerging leader, a progressive pro, or a career trailblazer. Get tailored tips and strategies to help you grow, elevate your skills, and move forward faster. Curious? Take the quiz now and step into the next chapter of your career with confidence. Unlock your potential today. Your career breakthrough starts here. Take the Promotion Readiness Quiz now. All right, Roberta, thank you so much for joining me today. Obviously, you are an expert in many things. You're a personal and professional development consultant. The very first thing that I wanted to ask you about is you and I were chatting the other day, and you mentioned that you do this exercise, this challenge where you ask women, what do they really want? And there's a specific answer that you typically get. Tell me about that.
Well, that's a really interesting question because I do ask people what they really want. And it is amazing how many people don't know what they want.
Mhm.
So there isn't, I think, a general rule of thumb, except to say people will just sit there and be quiet because they're never really asked that question. You
Mhm.
know, and when we're asked that question, it's usually pretty broad, right? It's not really specific, but you and I work with women who were helping advance in their careers and become more successful. And when you ask them that really pinpointed question, most of the people that I present that to don't really have an answer. And therein lies the problem.
Mhm. And so what do you think, why do you think that happens when you ask a woman? And I think what you had mentioned to me was, set an alarm clock throughout the day and do this for several days. And when that alarm clock goes off, ask yourself, what are you feeling and thinking? I think is what you said. And it's really hard to do. So tell me, why is that so hard?
Well, I think because the brain just it automates everything. I mean, our brain is so complex and there's so many neurons firing at one time that the way it maintains efficiency is to create habitual responses. We do
Mm.
something once or twice, we form a habit, and we don't think about it anymore. And I also think our days, today, especially in today's society, I didn't notice this so much with clients who are very old. Um, they have they have more a bit more of awareness than people today. But our lives are so busy that we automate everything, and we don't really take the time to stop and reflect about what's happening in our day-to-day life. I just moved to a new area. I moved from Minneapolis to Las Vegas. And today there's so much snow on the mountains. It
Mm.
is absolutely spectacular here right now. And I'm driving to work and I'm looking around at other people in the cars. And I can tell you, none of them were looking at the snow, right? We become oblivious to everything that's around us. And so, one of the things that I work with women to do is to make them aware. And the exercise that you have mentioned is really, it sounds very simplistic, but it is very hard to do. And that would be my challenge to your audience. Just set a random alarm for every hour, not at the same time, but randomly during the hour. And when it goes off, write down what you're thinking and what you're feeling.
Mm.
And you're going to find this is much harder than what you expect. The reason why I ask them is to help them build awareness of their everyday thoughts. And the reason why it's important to note what they are is that your feelings and your thoughts should be congruent. And
Mhm.
many times when we're experiencing challenges in our life, there's something we know we want, but we're not getting. It's because subconsciously we don't think that we're worthy of it, or we don't think we're capable of it, even though we consciously want it. And so things like imposter syndrome or limiting beliefs really get in the way of not only accomplishing things, but really even knowing what we want.
Yes. Yes. No, absolutely. So, yeah, I was thinking about what you were saying as far as like just being in the moment, reflecting what you think, what you feel. And I typically do some kind of either journaling or gratitude journaling. And sometimes, and I usually try to do 5 things that I'm grateful for. My morning coffee is amazing, but sometimes I do have to kind of sit there. I'm like, okay, what am I grateful for? And just like today, I put, the sun is shining because we're in Chicago and it's been very gloomy here with the winter. But the other thing is like how my face cream feels as I'm putting it on. So I'm trying to really be more in the present moment and reflective. And it is very hard to do when you're not doing it intentionally. So I couldn't agree more. And we are all so busy. It is really this time. Your work is so important right now, and I know we're going to talk about AHARA, which is a very unique program that you have. So can you explain how AHARA will impact women in the corporate world that are busy? And I really cater to women that are feeling more stuck in their corporate careers. They're trying to move up that corporate ladder, and they're doing things, but they're just not getting any traction. So tell me a little bit about the AHARA program.
Well, AHARA stands for a higher awareness and realization of your abilities. So it's really combining what I just said and what you've just said, because you can't get to where you want to go if you don't know where you want to go. And
Right.
AHARA approaches that very differently. It is a year-long process that isn't like a course that you would take. It is really a process where we start introducing new concepts to stretch our way of thinking, to develop our awareness of initially what's out and around us, right? We live in this sea of perspectives, which really can get in the way for women because men hold different perspectives than women do. And all of that's very complicated, right? And so, in order to get to where we want to go, we have to be aware of what we want, what we really want, and then take a look at everything around us that might be standing in our way of that or might be able to help propel us in the direction that we want to go. But if we don't have that awareness first, we can't get there. So the first step is awareness and looking at how we're functioning in the world and how we can make improvements on that. So we're focusing on changing the way we think and the way we problem solve. The program then, once we introduce these concepts, goes into really looking at the self, our self-esteem, our self-awareness, all of our self-realization, all the aspects of ourself, and how that relates to those other perspectives, and how we can still be true to ourselves and what we want, and then get what we want. And so I think with a lot of women today, and you and I talked a little bit about this, but I think it's important to bring it up. Women function so differently than men. I was working with somebody, and I know you write resumes, which is amazing, by the way, because that is not a skill I possess. But I've been an entrepreneur for 45 years, so I haven't had to develop that skill. But somebody asked me for my resume the other day, and I thought, I don't even have one. Like, I've never had to write one. And so I thought I should put something together. And when I sat down to do it, I said, oh God, no, I'm not even going there. So anyway, the reason why this came up with this person is that they were applying for jobs. And they were saying, oh, I just don't meet that criteria. I don't meet that criteria. I don't meet that criteria. And I just looked at her and I said, so what?
Mm,
You know, you have the skills, maybe not just in the way they're framing it, but here's the other thing. When people put out a job description, they're looking for the ideal candidate, and that does not exist anywhere.
right,
No one ticks all the boxes. But a guy, a man, he would tick all those boxes, whether he had them or not.
right,
And my philosophy has always been say yes and figure it out later.
right.
And
Absolutely.
very seldom, yeah, very seldom does that get me into trouble. Occasionally it does. But then I find other women like you and ask for help.
Yeah. Well, and to your point for what you just said, I always tell people obviously to do that, but also don't discount yourself.
Yeah.
Apply for the job and have someone else make that decision, because then you are holding yourself back. But I love everything that you're saying as far as awareness. Okay, so what's the next step in the program then?
So the next step in the program is really developing that self-awareness by, first of all, understanding yourself, because that's another thing that we don't do.
Right.
We don't really look at what is my limiting belief, right? Or in many cases, there's many of them. And where does that stem from? And that's kind of my wheelhouse. That's my specialty, is to really dive deep into that. And what I find is that these are all beliefs that have been given to us.
Yes.
They're not ours. They came from our parents, from our teachers, from our ministers, from television, magazines, books we've read, and none of it belongs to us. And I know it sounds really simple on the surface, but when you really start thinking about how we were influenced at such a young age, when our brains were not developed enough to have the logical capacity to say, oh, that's not true. We build on those things. Those things get reinforced over our whole life, and they become a habitual way of thinking then. And
Yes.
again, until we have the awareness of how and what we're thinking, you can't possibly change that.
Right.
So this idea of a higher awareness is absolutely essential to develop and realize your abilities.
Yes. And also along those lines from what you were saying, I did some research and psychologist Robin F. Goodman, she did a study and she discovered that girls' confidence peaks at age 9. So what you were saying is our brains at 9 years old are most definitely not developed. So if your confidence is stunted at 9 and then you add on all of the beliefs that you're inheriting or that people are, giving to you, then no wonder why when women go into the corporate space or into, just into the workforce in general, they're not able to come in with massive confidence. They're not able to come in and articulate their worth. So all of this is making a lot of sense to me. So Roberta, can you maybe showcase how AHARA works in a story format, like one of your clients that has gone through the
Sure.
program and any breakthroughs that they've had?
Yeah, so I'll give you a really good example. One of the first women to go through AHARA had come to me. She was very successful, and she was pretty bored in what she was doing. At least that was her perception at the time, right? Her limited awareness. And she just felt like, I want to do something else. I feel like I've conquered this, I've done it, it's time to move on. But she had absolutely no idea what she wanted to do.
Mm.
And so through the AHARA process, it's really interesting because we focus very much on the personal and then relate to how that applies in our professional life. And typically, as it is with women more than men, her focus was on family. Like, how do I take these concepts? She had two young children, and how do I implement that? And it was really interesting to see it shift into the professional. But she came to me with no idea of what she wanted to do. And
Mm.
this is also not uncommon. If we don't know if we're not aware, and we don't really know what we want, how can we really have a roadmap to where we're going to go? But I said to her, and this is what I would say to everybody is, you may not know the solution, but what you do know is how you want to feel when you get there.
Yeah.
And it is critical because here's what I've come to believe. There is nothing in this world that we want for any other reason than this. I don't care if it's a car, if it's a promotion, whatever it is. We want what we want because we believe we will feel better when we have it.
Oh my gosh, you're so right.
It is true. And so if we think about that, you don't, and this is where I'm talking about a different way of problem solving. And this is what AHARA focuses on. It is about first and foremost visualizing how you want to feel when you get there. And that's what I worked with this woman on because she knew how she wanted to feel. She wanted to feel connection with whoever she was working with. She wanted to feel a sense of purpose. She wanted to feel successful. And of course, all those are wonderful words, but I had her really dive in to what that felt like inside. And then we work it backwards. Because if you already can solve how you want to be and feel in the world, then you can determine what you're going to do. And ultimately, with her, she didn't change what she did. She just changed how she was doing it. Because what she discovered was it wasn't the job that was unfulfilling for her, it was the lack of connection and the people, and because she was the boss, it was her company, it was who she was had hired, and that lack of connection with them. She wanted more of a familial atmosphere at work because she was very much that way at home,
Mm.
and the two worlds were not meshing. You know,
Yeah.
she felt like she had to be someone else at the office.
Uh,
Yeah. And so I just think that's a really cool story because many times, and I'm sure you have the same thing too, Rosie. Women come to you and they don't, like coach me for what and where, I don't know. But really zeroing in on how you want to feel is, I think, the first step.
yes. Yes.
And
No,
do you
and
want to know, do you want to know the sad thing about that? Is that many women can't even describe that either.
wow. Now,
Because they'll say, well, I haven't felt it before. How do I know? Hmm.
yes, got that.
Yeah.
That's interesting. So, have you had any men go through this program, by the way?
That's very interesting. I have worked with a lot of men, but not with AHARA.
Okay.
And here's my philosophy on that. And I'm putting this out to the universe.
Yes.
I hope I am dead wrong with this. I really hope that. I think AHARA is a program that stretches people.
Hmm.
And I think because it is about all the things that we've talked about, this becoming self-aware, this dealing with how you feel about things. And I don't mean in a mushy way. I just mean getting in touch with who you are, right? That is not a strong point for men. And the reason why it's not is the same reason why women have these issues, because men have also had this erroneous programming that they're not supposed to be emotional, that they have to be strong, that they have to, they have a whole different set of issues than women have, but they have their issues too.
Yes.
And I think that is the main reason why I have counseled many men. In fact, I think my practice, which started out to be maybe 10% of men, grew to almost 50%,
Oh.
which I found really encouraging
Mhm.
because I think younger men today are getting different messages, just like younger women,
Mhm.
that are more positive, right?
Yes.
So I really hope there's men out there that want to listen to this because it benefits all of us
Yes.
when we
Absolutely.
understand each other better.
That's absolutely. And I mean, it's kind of sad to me because, especially in the corporate world, um, I think the majority of the upper echelon are white males.
Yep.
And to your point, if they're not in touch with their feelings, how can they properly lead people and be there for them uh, compassionately, empathetically, and almost lovingly from that human being perspective? I always find that people are so, especially like CEOs, are so rigid and they don't show emotion instead of embracing the fact that you have human beings working with you, not just employees. So I do hope that I think this is a great time in the world where so many of us, you and I and many different coaches, we're all kind of pushing together to make the world a better place, and we all have our different programs, but I love that AHARA is focused on self-awareness
Mhm.
first and then moving on into different things. It's so incredible.
Well, it's interesting because my background is in corporate training, and that specifically in the areas of sustainability, cultural change, and emotional intelligence. That's where I started. And I know it sounds like very separate things, but when I started in the sustainability field, that was not a well-received word
Mhm.
at the time. And so this cultural change was a big part of that. And, it really, in working with my corporate clients, I realized that you can't change a culture until the people within it change.
Oh,
And
yes.
it really is true. You can't dictate it from the top down. And honestly, the grassroots movement from the bottom up very seldom apply or succeed as well. And so, in all those years, and then in the 12 years since I left that sector, I've really been trying to bridge that gap. I've been working individually with helping people change. And Ahara really stemmed from this particular idea. We have a lot of problems in the world,
Yeah.
and we're not doing a very good job at solving them
Yeah.
because we are still functioning in an old way of thinking and being. It is this either or kind of thinking, and we have to shift to a both and. And I
Yeah.
think what's happened in the corporate sector and in many, many sectors, not just in companies, but you see it in sports, you see it in everything, in churches and community groups, it's prevalent. There has been this us versus them mentality with men and women. And you see it in all kinds of, not just gender, but all kinds of things where one person is right and the other person is wrong. And
Right.
there's so many beautiful shades of gray that we are not learning from, and they all provide us with opportunity.
Yeah.
And so Ahara came from the Einstein quote that we can't solve today's problem with the same kind of thinking that got us there. We
Right.
have to learn be, because when you're mired in the problem, there's no way you can see the solution because
Right.
it's what you're focused on that's always going to be prevalent and always what you're going to get more of.
Yes. Yes.
So Ahara takes all of those things, even the concept of what's reality,
Mm.
because it's our thoughts, it's our feelings that are shaping our reality. We think that we're in this society that controls us, that we're controlled by all these external factors. And yes, we cannot control them sometimes,
Right.
but we can always control how we feel
Yes, I
and
love
how we
that.
view them. Yep. And
And
and again, that just brings us back to what you think and what you feel is driving your life.
yes. And even like the stress that you feel, that's like self-imposed because you're letting all of these external things. And I caught myself this morning because I was like, oh my gosh, I have a lot of meetings. I'm like, okay, let's chill out. It's okay. And it
Yep.
instantly shifted my day from all of these things controlling me to me being more in control of my thoughts and my feelings. But I will say, until you're aware, or unless you're aware of work like this, you're stuck in that little rat race, and all the problems that we have are all in our head. It's craziness. Imagine a space where your career aspirations are supported by a community that truly understands your journey. A space designed for women like you, ready to elevate their careers. Our monthly membership isn't just about career advancement. It's about growing confidence, gaining clarity, and building lasting connections. From expert training and monthly workshops to a custom career roadmap, everything you need to climb higher is within reach. Join a supportive community where group coaching and networking turn your professional goals into achievable milestones. Celebrate your wins, big and small, with a network of women who are as invested in your success as you are. Are you ready to unlock the leader within? Join us and let's be brave, be bold, and take action together.
Think about it. I know, some people think this is woo-woo stuff, but really when you think about every law, every system that we have that governs us, man made that up. And I mean man, as
Mhm.
in men, right? Because we didn't have those says and those things a long time ago, and we're still trying to get those says, but there it is all made up. Everything is self-imposed, and it doesn't mean that I'm advocating you stick your head in the sand and you don't pay attention. That's not it. And I know the women that listen to your podcast are intelligent enough to know that, right?
Right.
But I think that we really have to start looking at things differently. And what I have learned in the last 12 years and in my consulting days is that if there's a problem, emotion is at the heart of it.
Yes, I
Um,
totally agree. So along those lines, I also know that you have the cleaning out the closet, and I think it's a good segue to talk about that because you referenced the limiting beliefs or the not feeling like you're deserving and worthy, and all of those are um, almost kind of like you put yourself in a box in your head and you're not sure how to get out of that box. And I think the cleaning out your closet talks about how individuals can actually um, first of all be aware that it's a limiting belief or that it's a thought that's keeping you holding you back, and then what can they do about it? So let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so cleaning out your closet is deeper work, and it's definitely one-on-one because it has to be very personal. And it's interesting because literally 30 minutes ago, a woman left my office and we were talking about limiting beliefs. And I was talking to her about the work she's done, and she's, oh, I know why. I know why I act the way I act and I do what I do. I'm just not ready to give it up yet.
Mhm.
And I thought to myself, I have to be very tactful, but it's like, you don't know the why then. Because
Oh.
if you really understood the why, you'd be willing to give it up, right? And
Mhm.
what happens is then we have to kind of take a look at the mind, the difference between the logical mind, the conscious mind, and the subconscious mind, because the conscious mind is very logical. It has to have reasons. It has to figure stuff out. The subconscious mind is the polar opposite. That's home to your imagination. It's home to your emotions, your belief system, all the rules about your life, all your long-term memories are there. And that's where it started because when you look at child development, I used to own a Montessori school. We had children ages 3 to 12, and I clearly could see this change happening in children. Up until the time you're around 6 or 7, 6 to 8, let's call it, you don't really have a logical brain. That hasn't formed yet. Your capacity to logic is not there. It's why every 4-year-old believes Santa goes around the world on one night, delivers presents to everybody, comes down their chimney, even if you don't have one, you know, And the reason why they believe that is because mom and dad said,
Right.
and they don't have a logical brain to say that's not possible, to even question it.
Right.
And you said something earlier that really struck me, and maybe this is a good time to talk about it. You said that men, that around a certain age, things start changing, right? Between males and females. That's what it was. That females around 8
Mhm.
are who they are, right? And I'm going to tell you that is true for all children.
Oh.
Because once such, and I used to tell parents this before I even knew the why behind it. I used to say, by the time your child is around 11, they are who they are.
Oh.
They've got their values instilled because the parents did that, right? It doesn't mean that you can't change. It's just that they are confident in who they are in that moment.
Mhm.
And I think what happens, alluding to back what you talked about, is that it is at around that age when society starts to elevate men over women. The boy is stronger, he's faster, he's whatever. And boys are now starting to mature a little bit. Girls mature earlier. And that continues through our 20s, right? It takes them longer to totally mature. But what that means is that the protective mechanisms that the brain has aren't fully formed until those times. And when those protective mechanisms are formed, our belief system's sealed in there. It really is. And it can be changed, but not without a lot deeper work than just superficial conscious mind stuff. And that's how I work with people at that deeper level through visualization, through meditation, through those kinds of things, because that is where all those emotions and those beliefs are stored.
Yes. And
And you have to get to the root.
I also, so, some more research that I've done is when women are actually, so what I said is like confidence peaks at age 9, and
That's
then
it.
women don't pick up working on their confidence again till their late 20s or early 30s when they are feeling stuck in their careers and they're trying to figure out, okay, what do I do? That's when they, consciously start working on the custom career roadmap, which, to me, it's just a variety of tactics that you need to do in order to be promotion ready. So when that promotion comes around, you're there, you're ready, you're confident. But a lot of times I think women, it's kind of like the chicken and the egg. They want to be confident, but they're
Mhm.
not actively and intentionally working on their career, similar to their, emotions. And so once they start working on their roadmap, they start knowing themselves, they start learning and understanding themselves, which inherently brings out confidence. It's not a coincidence that that happens, it's very intentional. So
Yeah, and I think there's another reason for that. And I think we're going to start seeing a shift in that. I really do think that. And here's why. And again, this is not based in science. This is just personal observation, but to me it does hold some water. And that is, every generation, like for example, I'm technically a boomer, but I'm at the very end. I was raised by parents who are much older than me. And so I have those older ways of thinking and influence. And in every generation, we start to see that period where we shift from one generation to another in our attitudes about how we raise our children and about how those children want to function in the world. Because a lot of times we don't want to do what our parents did. We
right.
want to do the opposite. The pendulum swings, right? So it's
Yeah.
in that little bit where we're not all the way up yet, where there's this opportunity. And I think that, you know, women who are probably 35, or say 35 to 40 and older, are still of that old time frame where you got pregnant very early, you had your families young, and then you sacrificed your career for that because you needed to be the mom, right? Or you were trying, like in my generation, to do it all and do it all perfectly, right? Which was ridiculous. But now younger women are not having children early. Some are not electing to have children at all. I honestly thought I was going to be in that category for a long time. And they're making different decisions. And I think the confusion that we have in these other older generations is, how do I balance all that? How am I a woman? How am I a mother? How am I a wife? How am I a successful person in my career? There's a lack of confidence because you're trying to juggle too much
Mhm.
and be good at all of them, because we put a lot of expectations on ourselves that are not realistic, right?
Absolutely. Yes. Oh,
So I think that with this next generation, I mean, I look at my daughter, she's waiting to have children until later. Maybe she will, maybe she won't, I don't know. But, she's focused more on her career and her studies and getting those things that she wants. And she's very confident. And I look at a lot of her peers exactly the same. And so I think that's part of the bridge. Does that make sense to you, Rosie?
yes, absolutely. I know that also the really young generation, like 20, like mid 20s, are talking salary. When I was in the corporate space, it was taboo to talk about salary. You would even
Absolutely.
like be threatened by your employer. You can't talk salary, And now it's like there's pay transparency laws coming. In Illinois, the pay transparency laws are going to be effective in January of 2025. So
Yep.
that's going to help with the pay gap. But these young women are talking about salary and openly sharing it. And I'm like, what? And I don't know if you ever go on TikTok, but there's this young woman. I think the name of her handles like pay transparency, because she goes around the country asking people, what do you do and how much do you make? And people tell her and they're sharing. And so I think that's also a mindset shift, that we don't have to be so secretive, about money and, opportunity. And I'm sure you've heard of the former Secretary of State who's now passed away, Madeleine Albright.
Yes.
And she
Amazing.
has a quote that I love, and it says, there's a special place in hell for women that don't support other women.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I see that's another sea change that I see coming too. I think women are much more supportive of each other, and that has been lacking. It drives me crazy. I have a really hard time holding my tongue when I hear other women being condescending or disrespectful to other women. And I think you're also seeing that's another shift that we're seeing when we look at generations. A lot of people drives me crazy when they say, oh, millennials are lazy.
Oh, yes.
I know it's just ridiculous, number one, to put that generic thing to a generation. But millennials were a direct response to the people from my generation,
Yes.
right?
Hmm.
And their values, they want to work for a company that has their values. They want to feel good about their job and their purpose and what they're creating in the world. I don't know what's wrong with that, because I think those are all good things. But I think what it was and why that moniker or term is applied to them is that they challenged the status quo.
Hmm.
And I think the next generation is even braver in saying, well, how much are you making? I'm not making that. That's not fair. And I think those are all really positive trends. And I know that at the top of the ladder, there's a lot of people who are older that are are challenged by those things, because it used to be that they just, it was rank and file. You
Yeah.
fell in. You wanted to work there, it was a privilege, right?
Yes.
And I think with today's technology and how society is so different, you don't have to work for the same company until you retire. That
Absolutely.
gives people more freedom and more power to
Yes.
affect change.
I was just having the exact same conversation with someone I know, and they were like, oh, these young people, they don't want to work hard. I'm like, well, according to whom? That's according to you. That's your value. They have
Right.
completely different value. I was listening to oh gosh, I think it was Amy Porterfield. I can't remember if it was. So she's a social media guru, and she was talking about making the bed, and her husband doesn't believe in making the bed, but she believes in making the bed. And what he was getting at is he values his time and he wants to go make money. And even though it takes 3 minutes to make the bed, not even, to him, it wasn't important. And for
Yep.
her, seeing the bed all messy just didn't register well with her. And so she needed to make sure that the bed was made. So it's the same bed, two different perspectives. And so this older person was like, they don't want to work hard enough. I'm like, no, that's your value. That's not
Yep.
their value. They value their time. They value their free time, their vacations, technology, shoes, things like that. But they don't necessarily value working 50 or 60 hours a week the way we were programmed from
That's right.
the older generation.
That's right.
So yeah.
This idea of quiet quitting, like I just have to laugh at this whole idea that bosses are enraged that their worker is not returning an email at 8 o'clock at night or
Yes.
returning a text. I'm sorry. Are you paying me for that? I don't see anything wrong with that objection.
I agree.
But yet, as an entrepreneur, I work 24/7 sometimes, right? And that's wrong too. It's again that old thinking that has to go.
Right.
That old thinking has to go because life is changing, society is changing, whether people like it or not. You
Yes.
need to jump on the bandwagon. And I know people look at me with my gray hair and my extended years and think I'm one of them, but I'm really not. I think that everything has to evolve and change. And when we are stuck in that either or way of looking at things, everybody loses
Yeah.
because there's no room for creativity or opportunity in that kind of thinking.
Yeah.
And we miss out. I can't tell you how many people say, oh, well, I've always done it this way. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. And okay, there's an argument for that. If you have a level of success that you are truly, truly is the word, comfortable with, then good for you,
Mhm.
right? But the reality of it is there could be so much more potential waiting for you if you didn't have that attitude. And
Yeah.
that is what the next part of AHARA does, is realize those real abilities that you're not. So yeah, it's fascinating to me. I think it's one of the advantages of getting older is that
Mm.
you can look back and you can see these trends, right? I think the danger with the getting older part, and my daughter very purposefully points this out to me sometimes, and I have no argument with it actually. Things are not the same when I was her age.
Yes.
Things have really changed, and
Absolutely.
the problems are different. Are there still the same problems? Of course. Are there ways to relate and learn? Of course. But today being 30 is not what it was like for me at 30 at
Absolutely.
all. At
Absolutely.
all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I totally agree with that. Well, so I know we're kind of coming down to the end of our conversation here, but I know that you have a special tool in your tool belt, which is hypnosis.
Hypnosis. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so tell me a little bit about how you use hypnosis with, or do you use hypnosis with AHARA, and how do you use that tool?
We don't really use it in AHARA.
Okay.
Unless someone's doing it one-on-one, which it is available. It's a little pricey because it's a lot of hours. It's very intense. But I use it in the cleaning out your closet part because it is a way to very quickly and efficiently get to those limiting beliefs. And it's just so efficient. Literally, I only spend on an average 10 to 12 hours with a client. And we've gotten to the root of the problem and they are ready to go, right? I look at it as a nice precursor to AHARA.
Okay.
Not everybody needs it, but most people can get value from it.
Yeah.
What it has taught me the last 12 years that I have used hypnosis is that I have a much deeper understanding of what really drives people and how limited the conscious mind is.
Yes.
All of your answers are inside of you,
Mhm.
every single one of them. And there's two things I trust in the world. One is that emotions drive behavior, and that's why you have to be aware of them. But the second is that your subconscious mind knows what the problem is and it knows how to fix it.
Mm.
I'm just a facilitator. That's all I am. Just
Oh,
like you with your coaching,
I
right?
love.
You're not telling people what to do, perhaps, because that's so individual. You can guide them, you can facilitate, but ultimately, where it's of most value to someone is when they figure it out for themselves.
Yes,
Yeah,
absolutely. And that's why, as as coaches, we're always, like you said, facilitating, asking, kind of digging, almost poking the bear a little bit of like, and actually I have you had mentioned a story. I have something similar where I was talking to a woman and she's like, I'm working on, because she has chronic pain, I'm working on all of these things, but I can't give up the sugar. And I was like, well, why can't you give up the sugar if you know that it's counterproductive to all the work that you're doing? And she's like, oh, because I like it. I said, do me a favor, do some research on how bad sugar is for the human body. Maybe if you see in writing, black and white, how terrible, because sugar is really poison to the human body.
it is.
And with her chronic illness, like, will the research that you find be the one thing that you need to finally say, okay, I really don't want to put that in my body because it's counterproductive to my healing? She's putting tons and tons and tons of hours of healing, meditation, the sauna, whatever. And then the sugar's right there. So it is so interesting. I think for something like that, it would be, kind of going through the program, be like, oh, I'm never going to eat sugar again.
Well, and here's the interesting thing. When you understand how the subconscious mind works, when you say something like, I'll never eat sugar again, the subconscious mind is very literal and it does not understand negatives. So it hears, I will eat sugar again.
Ah, yes, I have
And
heard that.
yeah, and this is the understanding the difference between how the conscious mind versus the subconscious mind function, because they do opposite jobs and they can't do each other's jobs. And so the reason why she's eating sugar is that there's an emotion driving that behavior. All of these things are just symptoms and they're coping mechanisms because
Mm,
sugar in the moment that you eat it makes you feel good.
yeah. Oh
It
gosh, yeah.
does. And that, it is addictive and it does drive more of that and you need more of that, and where does that come from? That comes from you falling and scraping your knee and grandma saying, "Honey, have this cookie, it'll make you feel better."
Yes.
Right? And then that happening repetitively, or it is protection. It is lots of things, but they're all based on emotion.
Mm,
So, yeah, it's
love
it's
that.
really fascinating.
Yeah, this was a wonderful conversation. Well, Roberta, obviously, we have talked about many different things,
Yeah.
but if you were to say, like, what's one actionable thing that would benefit our listeners from taking away from our conversation?
Oh my gosh, taking away from our conversation, there's a million, but can I give them an action item? Is this okay?
Absolutely. Yes.
So on my website, robertafernandez.com, there is a free recording. It's called You Are Like a Disco Ball. It's
Mm,
right in the header. It's right there. You don't have to look around anywhere else. It's free. It is for confidence building and motivation for how you're shining your light in this world. And it is guided, it's about 4 minutes of guided visualization that will go a long way, especially if you're having a tough day, right? Or not feeling so great about yourself. Please, please, please go download it and listen to it. It's amazing. Uh,
wonderful.
and it's my gift to everybody that visits my website. So, yeah, but I think if we had to say from our conversation, oh my gosh, we have talked about a lot of good things.
Yes,
I think it is just setting that alarm, writing down what you're thinking and feeling, and doing that as often as you can throughout the day. I think that's a really good first step in becoming more aware.
wonderful. Well, Roberta, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it. I think this was an incredible conversation. I can't wait for feedback from all our listeners and to share it out in the world. So thank you.
Thanks, Rosie. Thanks a lot. It was really nice to meet you.
Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of No Woman Left Behind. Today's conversation with Roberta was absolutely eye-opening. I know that you're going to take so much away from this conversation. Roberta is a powerhouse when it comes to personal and professional development, and she drops some serious wisdom that we all really need to hear. There are two things that I think were really critical to point out that Roberta and I talked about. The first one is that we need to break free from our limiting beliefs. Our limiting beliefs can hold us back, and these beliefs so often are from our upbringing, society, and past experiences that can seriously hinder our process if we don't confront them. Roberta shared that true change starts with becoming aware of these beliefs and then working to replace them with empowering thoughts that align with our goals. The second powerful thing was the power of self-awareness with AHARA. Roberta introduced us to her incredible program, AHARA, which is a higher awareness and realization of your abilities program. This is designed to elevate your self-awareness and help you realize your true abilities. This is a year-long journey that's all about shifting your mindset and breaking through those barriers that are holding you back. If you are feeling stuck in your career, AHARA might just be the key to unlocking your next level of success. Roberta leaves us with one awesome takeaway tip, and she recommends that we set a random alarm throughout the day on your phone and write down what you're thinking and what you're feeling when that alarm goes off. And trust me, it's way harder than it sounds, but it's a game changer in helping you become more aware and intentional with your goals. All of Roberta's contact information is going to be on the episode website. And a couple of other reminders. If you haven't done so already, please take the promotion readiness quiz that will let you know where you are in your advancement journey. I also want to invite you to check out the Unlock the Leader Within membership, created for women just like you. This is a community of like-minded women looking to advance in their careers with intention and confidence. So with that, remember to be brave, be bold, and take action.